Welcome back to the Stumpf Moving and Storage YouTube channel. As always, I'm Sean, and today I have laid out in front of me here all of the tools that you'll need to move a piano, whether it's a baby grand piano, a concert grand piano, or just a little spinette. Everything is laid out right here in front of me, and I'm going to dive into exactly what all of this is and how it's used in just a second. But before I do, if you guys like what you're seeing here, if you learned something, hit that like button for me. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel for more tips, tricks, and piano moving techniques. And just like that, let's dive into it. We're going to dive into what you need for a grand. And starting over here, we have 12 movers pads. Now these movers pads are needed to make sure that the piano is covered totally, as well as the legs when they're removed. Then we're going to go ahead and take a look at our rubber bands here. These rubber bands are very, very important. They're what holds the pads in place. You guys do not need stretch wrap. I don't know why it's become a thing. I don't know if it's laziness. I don't know if it's lack of knowledge, but stretch wrap is a tool. It is not a crutch. So you can use stretch wrap from time to time, but relying on it every day, it's just wasteful, and it's an incurred cost on the customer that doesn't need to be there. Why charge the customer for something that you can do? We have reusable rubber bands that, if used properly, can hold pads onto furniture and pianos without any issue whatsoever. The other thing is, when you're moving a piano, you don't need to remove the lid. That's another common misconception that for some reason has caught fire and is just spreading throughout the industry. Pianos come from the factory with their lids on for a reason, because the lid protects the inner workings of the instrument. And if something would bump into the inner workings of the instrument because the lid is not there, then you could really damage the instrument. So we want to make sure that we leave the lid on. And protecting the lid all comes down to making sure that the grand piano is placed on your piano board properly. Now we have a whole video that goes into dismantling a grand piano, and I have that linked right here for you guys. If you missed that, go ahead and take a look in the description below. I have a link there as well for you. It will also be at the end of the video in our playlist. If you guys are interested in any of these tools, if you need these tools yourself, go ahead and take a look in the description below. We have everything that you need to move a piano listed right down there. Moving right along, we have our hump strap. These are very, very, very important. Again, we have another video that goes over what a hump strap is and why they're used. That'll be linked right here for you guys. But a hump strap, in the case of moving a piano here, is so that you can pull the piano. So we'll have a guy in the back pushing and a guy in the front pulling, and while you're pulling the piano, you're using a hump strap. It's the best way to do it, especially when you're going up an incline. You'll want another person to hold the balance, because the person who's pulling with the hump strap will have almost no control over the balance. They have a little bit of control, but basically it comes down to the guy in the back and then the guy on the sides who are really working on the balance. Now that we've gone over all that, we have our E-track crank strap that we will be using to keep the piano on the board. When I turn the board here, you guys will be able to see what I'm talking about here. The board has these metal slats on the side. These metal slats are the connector points for the E-track. Now, if you don't have those type of straps, we also can use piano belts. Now this is a very, very old school way of moving a piano. This is the original equipment that would be used to move pianos. We've done that for many years. We've been moving pianos for almost 100 years now at this point, and we've really relied heavily on these in the past, but we were moving away from those because piano belts can loosen over time, and we found that your crank straps will stay tight throughout the entirety of the piano move. And as long as you're not over tightening the crank strap, you're good to go. Also, we use crank straps inside of the truck to secure the piano to the wall of the truck. That way it doesn't move. And they are by far the best way to secure the piano in the back of a moving truck. Okay, so that brings me to the piano board here itself. Now this is a 6-foot piano board. Piano boards come in all different shapes and sizes. Now a 6-foot board is for a grand piano, but you also have a 5-foot board for a baby grand piano. You have a 7-foot for a smaller concert grand, and then you have the 9-foot for the full-size concert grand pianos. Now, if you guys are wondering yourselves, what size do I need? What size do I need? You can measure, but for the most part, most pianos, most grand pianos that you're going to find in a house are going to be probably around the 6-foot size. At least that's what we come in contact with a lot. And we're going to go ahead and show you guys dolly. Now your 4-wheel dolly, this is extremely important. I have talked with some European guys. They do not use this type of dolly. I'm not even sure if they have dollies similar to this. It seems that between America and Europe and all over the world, we have different equipment, or different styles of similar equipment, we could say. But our dollies are made of wood. They have rubber caps and rubber wheels. So the rubber caps are to keep anything from sliding on there. So our piano board and the piano will stay fixed to the dolly. And our rubber wheels are used to make sure that we don't damage floors. These are designed to keep the floors protected. Now your dollies at Harbor Freight and Home Depot, they're going to be hard plastic. They're going to be maybe polyurethane, maybe if you're lucky, but they're not going to be soft enough to protect the floor. You guys could go a step above and beyond by putting floor coverings down to make sure that you don't have any damage. You could also use masonite on some of those very fragile floors. But for the most part, we find that your rubber wheels do a fantastic job of dispersing weight. They do not damage, they do not scratch, and they do not dent floors. If somebody tells you that, well, that's a misconception. We've moved thousands and thousands of pianos without any issues. Typically, if you do run into an issue, it's because somebody notices something that was there before and decides to blame you for something that you did not do. But you guys can obviously make sure that you don't have any issues by using these rubber wheels in conjunction with other floor coverings such as masonite or rug runners and things of that nature. Keep white carpet and stuff like that clean. You should not be using inside dollies outside and vice versa. Outside dollies should not be going inside the house. Switch them out and then you'll be able to make sure that you have no issues whatsoever. Now you might be wondering to yourself, well, this stuff is great, but what happens if you have to go over grass, gravel, dirt, mud, things like that? Well, we do have 2 other dollies that you might find very interesting. Let me go grab the first. Let me introduce you guys to the Lunar Rover. Lunar here has been around for almost as long as I have. This dolly was designed by my father and built by him about 20-something years ago, probably almost 30 years ago now. And then we have another one here that's just not as good. It's more of a mass-produced one you could buy on the market. This one here is specialty built that we had tailored to our needs. All the wheels spin like a regular dolly, and it has these beefed up wheels that resemble the Lunar Rover. Yeah, if you guys aren't familiar, it's the car that was driven on the moon. Well, this thing can handle any terrain. As you can see, the tires are a little muddy because we had just taken it out and used it to move a piano over some uneven surfaces. It was like muddy because the house was brand new construction, so the grass wasn't in yet. And the next one I have to show you is called a Dutch dolly. Let me grab that right now. You guys can see what we're talking about with the Dutch dolly. Now the Dutch dolly has 6 wheels. It's made of steel. You guys can see that we don't really use it too much. It's because not as easy to use. The wheels don't turn, so when you have to maneuver something, it has a set of wheels, an axle in the middle that sits lower, so you kind of pivot. Well, that isn't good for pneumatic tires because you end up blowing tires out a lot. These are great if you don't have extremely heavy piano. The heavy pianos are the ones that typically pop these tires. And when you're moving it, it can be a little bit more uneven of a ride because it has to be tilted a little bit to have 4 wheels on the ground. So I prefer our style over this one any day of the week. It's what I grew up using, and it's tried and true. It works. It go over any kind of terrain. You could pretty much do a 180 in place if you really need to. With this thing, you're gonna have to maneuver kind of like Austin Powers when you got that little cart stuck. So it has its time and place though. Everything has a time and place, but we prefer ours. And if you guys need any of these tools that I've been talking about here, from these dollies to the piano board, everything is listed right down there in the description below. Now moving right along to the tools that I have laid out in front of me here. First is going to be our mallet. This is a rubber mallet, and it's used to remove wedges and tap the legs to loosen them up, because the legs will end up getting stiff and stuck in place sometimes depending upon how long they've been sitting. But your old school Steinways use wedges to keep the legs in place, so having a mallet there helps remove them and also put them back in place. Sometimes you'll need a flathead screwdriver, a larger one, to remove any screws that might be holding the legs on. Depending upon the make and the model, might have a different size. So we have several different sizes of Allen keys here. Now you have other pianos that will need a 3/4 inch socket. So we have one of those. And you'll have a couple screwdrivers here, your standard screwdriver and a flathead, because some of these new Steinways have a very interesting way to take the legs off of it. It's a little nut that screws in, but it has holes in the side of it, and you'll need to use a screwdriver as a leverage point to either loosen it or tighten it up. But all of these tools depend upon the make, the model, and the style of piano that you have, and having just a toolbox with these in it is the way to go. You guys are going to run into all different types of pianos, because each major city back in the day had a piano manufacturer, and they did things just a little bit differently, especially when it comes to these older ones. Nowadays, it's seeming like things are getting a little more standardized with the Steinways, the Bostons, the Yamahas, the Essex, the Kwais, the Yongchangs. They all seem to be pretty similar to one another, or at least every time we go to that piano move with a specific manufacturer piano, we know the exact type of tools we need. It's the older ones that can throw you a curveball. And finally, we have these two pads here. We have a burlap pad and a synthetic pad. This is similar to a U-Haul pad. A burlap pad is the old school version of this synthetic pad. Now the burlap and the synthetic pad are interchangeable. What we use these for is to protect the keys of a grand piano. So we'll go ahead and we'll cover the keys of the grand piano first. We'll shut the lid, and then we'll wrap it up and over top with the actual lid of the piano up and open. And then we'll cover the music rack, and that will help protect the music rack from any damage or scratching, because we do leave the music rack inside the piano as well. And then we'll close the lid, and that will keep this burlap or synthetic pad in place and prevent any scratches or damages to the keys as well as the music rack itself. So with all of that being said, we've covered all of the tools that you will need to move a upright or spinet piano, as well as a grand, anywhere from your baby grand all the way up to your concert grand. And if you guys are wondering yourself, well, how do you move the piano? I have that video linked right here. That's how you disassemble and move a grand piano. I also have a video on how you move an upright piano linked right here. And if you guys want to see all the videos that we have about moving pianos, we have a playlist linked in the description below, as well as at the end. And if you guys are interested in any of these tools, if you need these tools yourself, go ahead and take a look in the description below. We have everything that you need to move a piano listed right down there. And I got to thank you guys for watching this. I hope you learned something. If you did, please hit that like button for me. If you guys are interested in learning more about how to move a piano, subscribe to the channel. We have plenty of videos out there, and we have more to come. And I'll catch you guys in the next one.